up, I bet.
My name is Elena Quinn. I'm the president of the Panhandle Republican Women.
No.
Thank you all for coming. We're going to start with the invocation from Usher Led 9. And we will have a pledge and the national anthem. So if you please stand.
Here, see, I can just grab it. It's over here.
Let's pray. Lord God, we're thankful for the privilege that it is to live in this great land, to live in a county like this, where we have the joy of knowing our neighbors and knowing those for whom we are voting, for those that would serve us. We ask, Heavenly Father, that in all that is done here tonight, that your name would be glorified, that you would help the candidates be able to express themselves clearly. I pray that you would give us wisdom as we consider whom we would prefer to have in the highest office of this county. We thank you for each of these men, for their willingness to do this, for their willingness to serve this community. We pray your blessing upon them and their families, whatever the outcome of the election is. We ask that you would continue to prosper our county. Help us, Lord, to grow in our understanding of each other, of good government. Lord, we pray that you would help us to preserve the freedoms that you have granted to us under our Constitution, both of the United States and this state. Again, we ask that you would be glorified in all things. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I'd like to invite Sheriff Creamer to say a few words and lead us in the pledge.
Thank you. If you join me in the pledge, we're so grateful that we live in an area part of the country that when we say the Pledge of Allegiance, we actually mean it. So if you face the flag over here, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
And now, Pastor Lynn Hine will sing the national anthem.
Singing master.
And you all, the hiring managers, when you vote on February 1st. So, again, my name is Elena Quinn. I'm the president of the Panhandle Republican Women. Our mission is to educate voters, but not in the way that we tell you what we think, way that we get candidates in front of voters as much as possible and let you decide for yourself. As far as this debate goes, we've been collecting questions for the last couple of months on our website, on Facebook, through email, and so on. So obviously we only had time for a few questions, so we had to condense those questions down. So we've done that, and we have several questions. The format is going to be all three candidates will be asked a series of questions. They'll have 2 minutes to answer, and then we're going to ask each candidate some specific questions. Okay. That being said, I'd like to introduce our moderator for tonight, Miss Amy Rumlin. Happens to be our Vice President as well, Ms. Mary Fiorabonti. And now I'd like to introduce our candidates. And as I'm introducing you, would you please come to the podium? Corporal Dave Schumann, 25 years Sheriff's Office. Reserve Deputy Travis Stoley, former Marine and 8-year law enforcement career between the Bonners Ferry Police Department and the Bonners Ferry Sheriff's Office. And Lieutenant John Van Giesen, 35-year career in law enforcement, mostly with the Kitsap County Sheriff's Office in Washington State, and has been with the Bonner County Sheriff's Office since January of 2021. Okay, now the rules. Candidates, listen up. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used in your campaign. Should you choose to answer our questions, you will have 2 minutes to do so. You'll get a warning when you have 30 seconds remaining, and you'll be signaled when your time is up. Okay? If you mention another candidate, then that candidate will have 1 minute for a rebuttal. Do you understand the rules as I read them to you?
Yes, I do.
I'm picking those nodding heads as a yes. Okay, so before we do all of that, we're going to give each candidate 3 minutes to introduce themselves and say a few words, and then after our questions, we're going to have 3 minutes for closing remarks. We're going to start in alphabetical order, so it'll be Dave Schumann, followed by Travis Stoley, and then John Van Giesen. And with that, I'm going to sit down and shut up.
Can you hear me okay? Yes. All right, great. I don't think I'm going to take 3 minutes here. I'm a retired Army Sergeant, retired in 1999. 5 days later, started with the Panhandle County Sheriff's Office. Worked there for about a year in the jail and transferred out to patrol. From patrol, I was working in narcotics for a number of years and primarily conducted the primary trainer, if you would, for the breath test instruments. All that really means is I keep the records and make sure everybody does their training online. I've served this community since I got here. I've enjoyed it. Going on 25 years. I believe I have something I can put forward here. I have plans for not just a citizens academy, but improving our reserve component. With the lack of manpower that we have, we obviously will work with other agencies and entities within this community and make what is strong now even stronger. Have a good day.
How about that? Can you guys hear me? All right. So my name is Travis Stoley. I was born and raised here in Bonners Ferry. A short time after I graduated high school, I was actually the second graduating class out of this school. I joined the Marine Corps. I spent 8 years and 9 months on active duty, deployed to Iraq twice, Afghanistan once, and along with the 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit. And I credit the Marine Corps to providing and laying the foundation of who I am as a leader. I mean, the experiences that I gained during that time of my life were invaluable. In 2014, my wife and I decided to move back home here to Bonner's Ferry. There's what other place you want to raise your kids. There really is no place like home. So, when I first moved back, I got hired on by the city of Bonner's Ferry Police Department the fall of 2014, and then ultimately ended up working at the Brown County Sheriff's Office. While working for each department, I worked in different roles. Obviously, I was a patrol officer and deputy in both departments. I worked as a school resource officer for the one school resource officer and for all schools here in Brown County. We've got 2 of those now, which I think is a great thing. I'm a post-certified instructor. I have an advanced and intermediate post-certificate. I used my GI Bill to get my bachelor's degree, and ultimately I ended up as a detective at the Sheriff's Office. As your sheriff, he will be accountable to the people of Mountain County. As the sheriff, I will hold the employees of the Sheriff's Office accountable to me. I'm excited to step into that role. I know I'm a leader that this county needs. I'm ready to really get my generation involved in politics. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you all for being here. I'll move a little closer here. I'm John Van Giesen, a candidate for Boundary County Sheriff. I'm 54 years old. I live in Naples. We have 7 children, including a granddaughter. We adopted 4 of our kids. We truly cherish the liberties that we have here in Boundary County. The choice to choose schools, the choice to carry and possess firearms, the choice to do on our property what we want to. And those are liberties that we hold close. We love our community, our church family, and most importantly, the folks of Boundary County, and that's why we're here. I've been a law enforcement professional for over 35 years. I have thousands of hours of training related to investigations, narcotics, supervision, and actual leadership and administration of a sheriff's office. I've been a patrol deputy, a sergeant, a narcotics task force detective, a supervisor, an internal affairs investigator, a lieutenant, a commander. I've also been the commander for a regional drug task force, also the SWAT team, of which I was a 26-year member, and commander for major crime investigative teams, including officer-involved shootings. I currently work for Sheriff Wheeler in Bonner County since January of 2021, where I hold the rank of lieutenant. I'm part of the command staff. For the short time I was a deputy detective, skipped the rank of sergeant, and moved to the rank of lieutenant to oversee professional standards, which includes our budget and the oversight of 911 and internal affairs. One thing I've learned in talking to people in the community is they don't understand the difference between a line position and that of supervision, leadership, or administration of a sheriff's office. There's a significant difference. The titles and ranks give you that authority, but it's what you do with that responsibility and the success that you have in those roles. I have the experience with my leadership teams of handling budgets, expenses, revenues, grants. Most people, my pledge, number 1, is to protect us, protect the Constitution of the United States and the great state of Idaho. As your sheriff, we will enhance communication, expect professionalism, and invest in the future of Boundary County.
I bring the experience, integrity, and leadership that your sheriff's office needs.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Okay, so we have a series of questions, and we're all announce who's going first in the response, second, third, etc. We're going to rotate that order. And then, as Elena said, if another candidate's name is mentioned, that candidate will have 1 minute to rebuttal. If I forget or gloss over that, please remind me. Okay, question number 1. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Question number 1. There is a big difference between a line function cop and a sheriff. What experience do you have as an administrator in a law enforcement setting? Dave, we'll start with you.
A lot of my leadership comes from the United States Army. What a lot of people don't realize is with the military police, which I was for 20 years, we actually ran our organizations like civilian law enforcement and police, and then we actually had to throw a soldier portion on top. Coming to the civilian world, bear with me for a minute here. I'm getting over the flu. So if I am a little harsh in my voice, that's what the deal is. Primarily, what you're looking at is my experience as a supervisor, leadership, has been in a garrison, be it civilian entity, and also in combat zones. My last combat deployment was Desert Storm. I had numerous soldiers that went from civilian or military into the civilian world. And we stayed in contact. They're like, yeah, it was a lot harder when we were working in the military. Working in the civilian world, you're there for a purpose. The purpose that we have here in Boundary County, and the leadership that I have, from the experience that I've had in the military, is going to be able to help me show you how we can make things better, primarily by our quality control program, which we'll have, that'll fall into our leadership. Quality control basically shows shortly after you've been contacted as a victim or what have you, other than the subject, another employee will be contacting you and will make administrative actions if need be to correct whatever issues may have been arrived. Thank you.
Travis, your response?
Yeah, so I have experience both as, all my law enforcement experience comes from working at the Boundary County Sheriff's Office and the Martinsburg Police Department. A lot of my management experience comes from my time in the military as a staff sergeant in the Marine Corps. While at the Sheriff's Office, I also was in charge of running our reserve program. So part of that duty entailed hiring, doing background checks, firing, counseling, making sure that the deputies had the training that they needed. In the Marine Corps, I spent, like I said, 8 years and 9 months, and a lot of time learning how to be a leader. My job in the Marine Corps was as a staff sergeant, was to manage anywhere between 30 to 60 people. And again, so we're managing the personnel side of it, we're managing the training side of it, we're managing all these different aspects, with the idea of mission accomplishment. We need to know that we can get the job done. And so, I bring that experience, to the Sheriff's Office and as a leader.
So the question I heard you say was, what type of leadership role, supervision have you had in civilian law enforcement and management of people?
Let me reread it just so that we're all on the same page. And I was going to mention that, gentlemen, if by the time we get to the second, third candidate, please let me know if you need me to repeat the question. There is a big difference between a line function cop and a sheriff. What experience do you have as an administrator in a law enforcement setting?
So my leadership experience began in more informal roles as a deputy sheriff when my supervisors gave me responsibility. I worked for 2 sheriff's offices. I worked through the ranks of 2 sheriff's offices. That leadership became more formal roles, formal through promotional opportunities at both sheriff's offices, where it was competitive to figure out who's the best candidate to move forward into those roles in that office. I competed against many other employees for those positions. After moving into leadership roles, formal leadership roles, some of the responsibilities, as you know, the most important, the most valuable asset within our sheriff's office is its people. We provide a service, a public service. Doesn't matter the equipment we have, it comes down to the people. And you need a sheriff that advocates for their people. And that's exactly what I've done throughout my career, whether it's been as an internal affairs investigator, showing the empathy for the subject officer that's involved, whether it's a guild representative fighting for the rights of that employee or fighting for wages and benefits, or whether it's an administrator making sure that $15 million budget that I've handled, that we are doing it in the best interest of the taxpayers and for our employees. The other thing is accountability is a huge part of leadership. The sheriff hires folks, trains folks, mentors folks, promotes them, commends them, and also when they fall short, disciplines them and holds them accountable. As I explained in my opening, there are significant differences between that role of a line deputy, officer, detective, and those that actually have experience in management and administration of a sheriff's office.
Okay, next question. Travis, we're going to start with you this time. As sheriff, you are the top authority in the county. If there are laws, executive orders, resolutions, or mandates passed that violate your oath to defend the Constitution, which will you obey?
Thank you. So that's probably the easiest question of the night. I will not violate the Constitution, period. Really comes down to that. The role of sheriff is, like I said before, to stir with the will of the people. And, Idaho is just not the place that we're going to allow that kind of thing to happen, Boundary County especially. So, as sheriff, I don't have a problem standing up to the things that I know are right or I think are right. And, we can address these things as they come up. We can what if these as, all day long, the different scenarios that can happen. But, I can promise you that we will not violate the Constitution.
John, same question.
Number one, I will not enforce any unlawful mandates or unconstitutional laws. That's what we have the courts to interpret those cases for before we have to take any action on them. You saw my boss in Bonner County, Sheriff Darrell Wheeler, stand up and say, I will not enforce any mask mandate. He was the voice for the Idaho Sheriff's Association. And Sheriff Kramer also followed that guide as well. That's the same leadership that's been demonstrated to me that I will enforce. As I explained, my number one pledge is to defend the constitutions of the United States and the great state of Idaho. The great thing is we have laws on the books that help us do that too. For instance, firearms. House Bill 69 from 2014 actually tells us that it's illegal for us to use any state assets to enforce federal law on firearms. So not only do we have the backing of both constitutions, we have our legislators putting good laws in place that firm it up even better.
It's going to sound like we're just repeating ourselves here. Okay? Any officer or any person that took an oath, it tells you that you're going to enforce or support the Constitution of the United States. So, I've been billed as the constitutional candidate. No, baloney. There's three guys here that have taken oaths. Those oaths are to the Constitution. And if for some reason, any of us would have turned around and said, no, I'm not gonna do that. That's just crazy. You gave your word to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. That is what I will do. That's what I have done. That's what I'll continue to do. There is no way in heck that there's going to be any type of illegal, unconstitutional stance made by my office.
Okay, John, we'll start with you on this question. What experience do you have with managing a department budget, and how have you saved the department money?
Experience managing a budget and saving money. So one of the ways that experience managing budgets, there's several ways that I've done that. On patrol as a lieutenant, the leadership team of 2 other detectives, 2 other lieutenants, and the chief managed a $15 million budget for patrol deputies. That included all the specialty units, Marine Services, K-9, our fleet, crisis intervention teams, other specialty units. That also included managing grants with limited strings attached. Things like reporting how many drug dealers you arrested this month. That was a $215,000 annual grant that supported the drug task force that I was commander of. A smaller grant that I was involved in managing was about an $80,000 or $85,000 sex offender grant that came through Commerce, State Commerce, for all the agencies within the county to check on sex offenders for compliance. I worked MOUs with each of the cities involved and made sure that we did our quarterly reporting to the state to get our reimbursement for those funds, and then distribute those funds to those agencies. Another way that I brought revenue into my agency is I was asked to go help another agency with a drug investigation. I was over there for 2 days. I said, hey, you might want to take this guy off. He's picking more than $250,000 up from our folks. And they took him off the next day with $1.4 million in cash, a BC Bud case. They wrote our agency a check for $300,000 for us to do drug enforcement in the community for 2 days of effort because of my relationship with other agencies. That's one way that I've created revenue and saved the taxpayers money.
Dave, do you need me to repeat the question?
I have not had to take care of any budgets as far as the civilian world. I did work a drug grant. It was called the Burn Grant when I was working as a narcotics detective here. I did not manage that. So my limited experience with grants, we saw some in the military, very few, especially when we work with the Department of Defense guards on the broadway. I am versed in it, I understand it, and it's not something that's rocket science. We can run with it. You have to pay attention to grants. You know, when you hear limited strings or something of that nature, you look at that and you go, okay, what are those strings attached? Is it going to be something that is going to be constitutional-wise or whatever? Obviously, you don't take those. As far as any type of budget, we did have a big budget in San Antonio, Texas, where I was the operations sergeant officer, and we had a large SWAT team. We were able to save a large amount of money by taking what we had, find out what wasn't being used, because some people just like toys, and we ended up selling that to the civilian organizations, making money, throwing it back into the fund. That's all I have.
Yes.
So make sure you're open.
Absolutely. Okay. What experience do you have with managing the department budget, and how have you saved the department money?
Yeah, so I have not had direct experience managing department budgets, but I understand how the sheriff's office budget works. I know we have to work with our commissioners. The commissioners set that. And also, it's my job as a sheriff to advocate, whether it's for wages, whether it's for equipment, training, and to manage that. An important aspect of that is, checking in as throughout the year, making sure we're on budget. Every year changes. We all know fuel prices go up. All sorts of variables come into that. So, as the year goes by, we just do temperature checks. Where are we at? Do we need to change some things here and there? Personally, for the last 6 years or so, I've been running a construction business, and I see it very similar. You set line items, and as you go through a bill or you go through a sheriff's budget, you just go through that and make sure you're on budget. If you got to move money or save money here, whatever it is, you can do that. So just paying attention to it, because we don't want to end up wasteful spending. It's very important, but also I'm looking forward to that challenge if it arises. Thanks.
Hey. Dave, we're going to start with you on this question. If you become sheriff, how do you plan to perform as a manager to your employees? What kind of boss would you be?
Well, is that better?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
What I believe as a leadership that I've demonstrated while in the military is you take your management skills, one, you know you're in charge. You don't need to push that around. What are you in charge of? Find out from your employees, what is your job? Make sure they understand what their job is. They need to also understand that that's what they're going to be held to. It's not a big secret when you walk in and say, hey, did you do this? And I'm that knucklehead that, yeah, if I messed it up, yeah, I messed it up, sorry. In the military I was known for always being early. If I showed up late and I was in charge, I wrote myself up. Walk into the lieutenant and say, here, sign this. And they look at me when you're going to yeah, maybe. But the bottom line is you have to show the standards, hold the standards, enforce the standards, and there should never be a shock. You get input from your employees, you work as a team. Simple as that.
Travis?
Yeah, so as John alluded earlier, the employees are the most important aspect of any agency or any employment. And I only know one way to lead, and that's my example. I'm a hard worker, I know that. I'm not afraid to put the boots on and get to work, but also I will be very involved. I will ensure I'll set expectations from day one, and then I will inspect those expectations. Hey, here's what we need to be doing, and then making sure that's being followed. Also, a sheriff is only one person. You need to have the right personnel in the right positions. You need to have sergeants that are allowed to do their job, and they're given the resources to do their job. Supervisors throughout the whole department. Once you allow that, then that will just end up taking care of itself. We have a lot of very, very great people that work at our sheriff's office hard every day, put their lives on the line every day, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to lead them.
Can you reread the
Yes. If you become sheriff, how do you plan to perform as a manager to your employees, and what kind of boss would you be?
Number one thing is to set the example. You set the example for them to follow. You lead from the top, not from the bottom. You know your people. That's inside of work and outside of work, so that you can support them, so that they can give you the best effort when they're there. We have a dispatcher in Boundary County that works multiple jobs to pay the rent, but takes those 911 calls from you in potentially life and death situations. I think it's a profession, and I think it's something that we need to put more value in. Understanding what each of their jobs are. Detention is different than our civil deputy. Driver's license is different than our deputies. Our support staff are different than the admin and command staff of the sheriff's office and the first line supervisor. They all have different jobs. Setting expectations is big because you will fail and you will get complained about if you don't set expectations and understand what people want. One thing that I learned very early in my career is take 10 seconds to find out what a person's expectations are, see if we can meet them. And this is more customer service based out in the field, but it also applies to our employees because we're going to fail them if we don't even know what their expectations are. We will always be short. Provide relationships where they can have open communication with their supervisors, no threat of retaliation or anything of that sort. Preparing employees for success and preparing them for the next roles. I want them competing for the next roles within the office. And I've been an advocate for our employees through guilds, employee associations, and building those relationships for the employees. And that role is so important, it'll be continued as sheriff.
Hey Travis, we're going to start with you on this next question, and it's a long one. What experience do you have responding to crimes against children? What do you feel the role of law enforcement is when responding to calls involving Idaho's Child Protection Act? And how do you plan to work cooperatively with the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare and the Boundary County Prosecutor to ensure child safety?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, and one I'm extremely passionate about. You know, I mentioned earlier I worked as a school resource officer here at the City of Barker Police Department, and bar none, to this day, the hardest job I've ever done. And it was the busiest job busiest I've ever been in at a job. You know, there's a lot of problems with government. We can all agree we're not the most efficient all the time, but it seems, you know, especially with health and welfare and with this particular issue, sometimes that we really struggle. And what happens when something goes wrong is the victim is a child, and they're left to figure it out on their own. So, you know, it's extremely important to make sure our deputies have the training, the understanding of how to handle these types of calls. Also, it's extremely important to build that network and relationship with the Department of Health and Welfare so that these problems won't slip through the crack. There's really no thing that I can think of that's worth fighting for more than our kids.
Can you repeat the long question?
Sorry. What experience do you have responding to crimes against children? What do you feel the role of law enforcement is when responding to calls involving Idaho's Child Protection Act? And how do you plan to work cooperatively with the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare and the Boundary County Prosecutor to ensure child safety?
Okay, and I only have 3 minutes. Awesome. So, for those of you that have checked into my background, this is near and dear to my heart. I first became involved in foster care in 2014 when I was involved in removing 32 kids from meth labs in 2004 and wondering what happens to those kids. But the blessing that's come from it is I have 4 beautiful children because of it. Unfortunately, the gentlemen here have seen way too much harm to children like I have. And it's some of the worst cases that we deal with. It comes down to the relationship with the social workers and the prosecutor's office to ensure that we are handling things properly, we're teaching our deputies properly, and especially with the new law, I think, or the new case that came out last 2 weeks ago, Ingram versus Mosier, which the court's interpreting that law enforcement now needs a court order to remove children from home. whereas before, the standard was an imminent threat to them in the home. So we have to work through that because the courts aren't out there looking in these homes and facing these children in these circumstances when we are. So that's going to be a challenge. But the goal of the sheriff, the responsibility of the sheriff is to build those relationships, provide that instruction with the prosecutor's office guidance and with the court's guidance on what that ruling actually means, to be able to give our deputies out in the field their ability to protect the children in the circumstances that they need to be protected.
I have a motivating factor that lives with me. She's 4 years old. I look at my granddaughter every morning, every day, and wonder what's going to be like this in 30 years. I've gone to many cases, many calls where children, we walk away thinking something else is going on here. Maybe we need to do some follow-up. Shortly after I started on patrol up here, we did a drug raid in one of our local parks, their trailer parks. I went through, my main job there, other than being big, bald, and ugly, was to control the dog that they had locked up in one of the rooms. It was a meth house. Dog came out, big Rottweiler. Thankfully, she was more hungry than aggressive. Gave her a milk when we were friends. One of our ex-sheriffs, I believe, ended up owning that dog, and he lived on Brown. I sheltered the 4 children that were living in that house. We had to find them first. At first, I got questioned by my sheriff, why are we doing this? Because it's the right thing to do. He obviously looked at it the same way. Eventually, we went in there, got a ruling, found the children, and got them in a safe zone. They're now parents and having their own worries, if you would. I believe we need to have a team established within our agency, which we will have one on the sheriff, that will look into these type of cases and work closer with the other agencies to make sure that things don't slip through the crack. It's going to happen, but we want to reduce it. Thank you.
Okay, John, we'll start with you on this question. How big of a problem are drugs in this county, and how do you plan to address it, if at all?
So, as you know, in the community, the biggest threat to our public safety is fentanyl. Marijuana doesn't kill people, fentanyl kills people. I think in 2022 in Idaho, there were nearly or right around 300 deaths statewide from synthetic drug use overdoses. I have experience in obviously investigating cases, but my experience goes into being an instructor for drug investigations, being trained in DEA basic and advanced drug investigator school, attending the Drug Unit Commanders Academy in Quantico, Virginia, where I networked with the other drug unit commanders throughout the nation and foreign countries as well too, to come up with the best ways to combat drugs within our community. It's my job and my staff's job at the Sheriff's Office to help train our staff to appropriately make those arrests out in the field, but not stop with that. We need to go after the entire network, and if that means using additional resources to combat that drug problem, to keep it out of our community, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I've been recognized as an expert in federal and state court on drug investigations. I figure out ways to get our drug dealers prosecuted. For instance, in Sandpoint, when we have a fentanyl overdose and somebody dies, we didn't have a state law until 2 weeks ago that allowed us to prosecute them in the state of Idaho. House Bill 406 was just signed by the governor, which in July will allow us to charge drug dealers when it results in their death. Secondly, in that legislation, they also put mandatory minimums for fentanyl possession, trafficking fentanyl. So there will be mandatory minimum prison terms for fentanyl dealers. Those are 2 tools that we have.
drugs in this county, and how do you plan to address it, if at all?
Well, if I was to stand here and say we don't have a drug problem, that'd be an outright lie. You could work narcotics investigations here 24/7, 7 days a week, and still not catch up. We have an aggressive team of people that work on control. The joke used to be you can't get through Bonners Ferry between the hours of 6 at night till 2 in the morning and have a tail light out without being stopped and searched. Well, that's kind of an indicator. We will have an aggressive stance when it comes to enforcement of narcotics. We do not have a large amount of people. That does not mean we just give up and fight. We go and recruit from within. What I mean by within is within our community. A person doesn't have to run around and have a badge on. They can actually do intel. You train these people. Train them as to what you need to search for as far as intel. Then we get the boots on the ground, running around, checking it out, getting it done. We will have a stronger task force, if you would, than what we had in the past. Thank you.
Yeah, so fentanyl is a huge issue across our nation and Idaho. We've had fentanyl overdoses in the city of Bonners Ferry. So, yeah, we love Mountain County and we love all the things that are good about it, but we also have that side of things. And, proactive police work goes a long ways to preventing, that kind of behavior. It just has to be not acceptable. Our city officers, our county deputies, they all need to go to the correct training. There's desert snow training, drug interdiction training, all different stuff out there that are great resources for communities the size of ours that doesn't require a lot of money. It just requires the right people going after the drugs in our town. We could look at that. It could be through a task force. It could, we've got we call a Northern Border Task Force. Basically, a group of involved agencies, whether it's city, ISP, Border Patrol's there, RCMP, Lincoln County, Ponderay County, all these different agencies come together every quarter, and we sit down and we discuss, hey, these are the things we're seeing. And it would actually blow your mind to realize the amount of drugs that goes through Boundary County, even into Canada. When I first started getting involved in that, it really surprised me. So it'll be a priority. It's something we absolutely need to work on and something we will work on. Thanks.
Okay, Dave, we're going to start with you on this one. One of the ways the sheriff acquires funding for certain projects is through grants. Have you applied for or managed any grants? If so, what was it for, how much was it, and what were the requirements of the grant?
As noted earlier, I've only worked one grant here, and that was the burn grant. I was the foots on the floor type thing. I've not had to manage any of those. As I mentioned earlier, I did manage grants in the military, but just the one. I have not a large experience on that, but again, not rocket science. But when you look at these grants, there is training for people to actually learn how to write grants. You can send people to those. Some of our people already have it. Use them. Utilizing our personnel is a key thing. So if we're going to send them to training and then not make them or have them do what they were trained for, you're defeating the purpose. So as far as grants experience, I'm weak in that if you would. I'll admit that, but at the same note, it's not something that I can't do.
Yeah, so similar to Dave, I have not had a lot of experience specifically writing grants. The city and the county both use grants quite a bit. I mean, they're great for certain things. So, for example, we use grants for equipment, or we'll use it for like the 100 deadliest days of summer, where we're doing DUI offenses or different things like that. So there is a time and place for that. But it's also something we need to consider. You know, we don't need to write a grant just to get a grant. You know, if we have a specific need, we can take a look at that and go through the strings that are attached. You know, is this something that we're okay with? Is it worth, you know, going through this process? And, you know, a lot of the grants that we've worked, you know, we're just basically recording stats. Like, you know, hey, how many DUI arrests did you have tonight? How many drug arrests, felony arrests, misdemeanors, etc. So, which are all important things. I mean, we're getting guys out on the street and keeping the street safe. So, really, there's just a time and place. And as kind of Dave alluded to it, it's not really complicated. You know, it's just something you need to make sure we're not using too much.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. One of the ways the sheriff acquires funding for certain projects is through grants. Have you applied for or managed any grants? If so, what was it for, how much was it, and what were the requirements of the grant?
Yes, and I'll go through them as quickly as I can. The first grant I administered as a detective at the drug task force. The sergeant came to me and said, hey, we have to start processing meth labs. Here's $10,000 that we've been granted. Figure out how to keep us safe in processing meth labs. Spend the money, buy the equipment, you have full control. That was my very first exposure to a grant. It grew into reporting the information for the burn grant, which is the Department of Justice funding of drug task forces throughout the country. Which as a detective, my responsibility was every case that I do, I need to provide the information, the stats for that drug trafficking organization so that the Department of Justice can see that we're using that money appropriately. And then also, as I mentioned earlier, also as a commander of that drug task force, those grants have fluctuated over time. At one point, we were over $313,000 a year annually. It dropped down, well, there were years that we didn't get paid, that we then got in lump sums years later. When I left, it was about $210,000 annually. And when I say I left, after I retired from my 29-year career at my first sheriff's office. While I was there, I also administered a domestic violence training grant through the Department of Commerce, which gave our investigators $10,000 to have domestic violence investigation experience. There are a handful of grants that the Boundary County Sheriff's Office is involved in. One that I'm utilizing down in Bonner County right now is unsolved cold cases and unidentified remains. I've asked the Idaho State Police for a grant for remains that are over 10 years old, and we have a DNA profile from those bones. So that was money that was free to the citizens of Bonner County at that time.
Okay, this is a good one. Not that the rest weren't, the rest were awesome. Are there any circumstances where you would go door to door to confiscate firearms or other weapons from the citizens, like what happened in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina? Travis, we'll start with you.
You guys are giving me the easy questions. I mean, absolutely not, right? There's just no reason for that. That would be, in my opinion, unconstitutional. We've already discussed my position on that. You know, the sheriff's office, again, is there to serve the community. And, you know, and I'll be held accountable to that aspect. And there's just no way that would ever happen. I mean, I don't know how to extend this out to 3 minutes. It's not going to happen.
No, the answer is easy. As I explained before, it's actually a violation of state law to do that. So not only supporting and defending the constitutions of both the state and the United States, but it's a criminal act to do that.
Yeah, again, it's a no-brainer. You know, I don't know how I can stretch a no into 3 minutes, but if you have guns that you want to just totally throw my way, contact information will work. That's fine. You don't try to know. The answer is no.
Okay, and another long question. Don't know who gets one. Oh, hold on. I don't have a note for who's going to start this one. Hold on one sec. John, we'll start with you. Boundary County is the home of a national tragedy played out in Ruby Ridge, the wrongful framing, prosecution, and faithful acquisition of a then alleged criminal by a federal government occupation and not the local sheriff department accountable to its constituency. The sheriff at the time of Randy Weaver acquiesced his authority to the federal government, then on making an example of the Weavers. What would you have done in this situation? What would be your response to an even more corrupt and feral federal government?
Can you repeat the last portion, please?
The question parts? Okay.
Response to,
What would you have done in the situation at Ruby Ridge with the Weavers? What would be your response to an even more corrupt and feral federal government?
first off, we have all learned from American tragedies, Ruby Ridge, Waco, of the faults of allowing the federal government to come in and control our county citizens. Sarah Weaver has said, as simply as if the sheriff would have come up and talked to my dad, this would all be over. So we learn from those examples. That's the example that I'll be. I'll be that person talking to Sarah and Randy and saying, I'm here, they're not, let's resolve this, and not allow those folks to come in and do what they did to our community. It may be 30 years ago, but it's still very close to all of our hearts. The second thing is, those relationships don't begin at the time of the incident. It's a responsibility for me as sheriff to develop those relationships before those incidents occur, so that we can head them off and not even let them get to that type of situation. I've developed relationships, as I said, all through this country with different law enforcement entities and professionals that we can network together and find a solution to work for us. The rest of the world isn't that much different, and the profession of law enforcement is pretty similar across the board. If we brought a ER doctor from Salt Lake City to work in the Boundary Community Hospital, would we think he doesn't know anything about running an emergency department? Law enforcement expects the same professional to be in that role as sheriff and stand that line.
Without a doubt, Ruby Ridge was a tragic error. It's used now in academies as what not to do. We need to have a better connection, and I believe we do now. You know, we, on a daily basis, are reminded about the tragedies that occurred there. There is no reason that federal government should come in and be stormtrooping on the side of the hill. The first sheriff, when I got here, his routine normally with new people on patrol was to take them up to the Weaver property and walk them through and talk about how the young man got shot. When I asked the question, when did it get out of control? His answer was direct, very simple. He goes, thankfully I was not the sheriff at the time, but it got out of control from day one. Contacting your people in this community and being approachable is a key thing. We're in the techno world. We can use all of that. We can actually get out there and let people know what we can do to assist them. If a foreign entity, if you would, be it a federal government, comes into our county, privileged or not, they need to tell the sheriff. And I will be telling every entity that you need to do that when you come here. Not know if it's ands or buts. You come to my county, you want to enforce something, you need to let us know. Thank you.
all that, please.
Shebang? Yeah, you bet. Boundary County is the home of a national tragedy played out in Ruby Ridge, the wrongful framing, prosecution, and fateful acquisition of a then alleged criminal by a federal government occupation and not the local sheriff department accountable to its constituency. The sheriff at the time of Randy Weaver acquiesced his authority to the federal government bent on making an example of the Weavers. What would you have done in this situation? What would be your response to an even more corrupt and feral federal government?
Thank you. So, I mean, I agree with, you can't release that kind of control. I think the sheriff's office could have handled that situation themselves. I think, that relationship aspect, the being connected and accountable to the community and the people of Boundary County, I mean, that's hitting the nail right on the head. I was born and raised here. I don't know everybody in this room, but I know a lot of you. I'm connected to this community. I care about what happens. I was very young when that happened. I don't remember it specifically when it happened, but it's just always been part of my life. That's always been Boundary County history, and it's an unfortunate part. And it's just doing the right thing. It's the sheriff needs to be able to step up to the plate when needed and say, hey, like we're not going to allow this kind of thing to happen. And I really can't make it any more plain than that.
Okay, Dave, we'll start with you. What experience do you have coordinating and working with other local, state, federal, tribal, and international agencies?
25 years here almost. I got here in August of '99. Worked with every type of entity there. Branching out into different specialties that I've had, be it the K-9 or what have you, I ended up working with a lot more entities, be it probation, be it the border, and this border patrol having their dogs. I'd go up there and spend an entire day sometimes just working every third vehicle or whatever they considered was the need. I've had a lot of experience working with these type of different organizations just here, and it's important for a county of this size and with as many. It would make your head spin how many entities we have that wear badges in this county. Back it up even further prior to coming here. Working as a military policeman for 20 years, traveling the world, we end up dealing with a lot of different organizations. Some very pleasant, some a little tasky. But the bottom line is you have one common goal normally, and that is taking care of people. As long as every agency that you're dealing with has that concept, then there's not a problem whatsoever.
Travis.
Yeah, so I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier. The Northern Border Task Force that meets quarterly here at the Sheriff's Office, that's one great resource that we have. We're in a border community, which is unique in a lot of aspects. We've got the border Montana, Washington, obviously Canada to the north. And so, another unique part of working for a small agency is we do a lot of our own investigations. So that networking piece is key. And so this task force, like I said before, they come up, the information share, we get each other's cards, and if we run into a situation that, hey, we see something's going on, but we can share that. We've got a tribal police department here that we work really well with. The Sheriff's Office got an MOU with, and so, really all my experience working with those agencies is with the Boundary County Sheriff's Office.
Sorry to ask you to do this. Can you repeat the question?
Absolutely, no problem. What experience do you have coordinating and working with other local, state, federal, tribal, and international agencies?
So my experience in working with all those different agencies, there's one that kind of stands out to me. Organized crime Drug Enforcement Task Force, which by itself means you're working with everybody else. I've worked several of those cases. To reach that qualification, you have to have an attorney's office grant that, and it actually brings dollars to cover overtime for our investigators, so it is significant. My experience has been in 3 border counties. Kitsap County sits in the middle of Puget Sound with a waterway between us and Canada, where several of our missing people end up on Vancouver Island. Working down in Bonner County, we work routinely with Newport, Spokane, Pend Oreille County. And we have the same type of situation here. We're one of 3 counties in the nation that have 2 adjoining states and 1 international border. The support that our deputies need to give people in the field could be as simple as that single U.S. Forest Service law enforcement officer that's out there. That 1 officer, 2 officers responding to help them on the call. So it gets as simple as that, up to attending meetings, getting intelligence about what's happening in the community, but more importantly, what you do with that information and how it creates results. It doesn't mean anything to attend meetings and share information if it doesn't put people in jail and hold people accountable.
What is your proposal to fund a desperately needed new jail? Does accepting federal inmates require us to adopt federal operating procedures? Travis, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so, we've all heard about it. Hopefully, if not, you will learn a little bit about it tonight. But we've got an aging jail in Geauga County. It's outlived its service life. As our population grows, so does the crime rate. And as that happens, obviously our jails fill up. And so what our jail is designed to handle is not what the reality of the inmates and the situation we have. So there's many different options, but starting with the community. Like, we're not going to be able to build a jail without the support of the community. So the information sharing, making sure that you guys are aware of what's going on and what our detention deputies are having to deal with every single day. I was working in the jail one night when they were trying to manually light a heat hot water tank, and it blew up right in the guy's face. Thought a bomb went off in there. So we've got issues, and so that's something that we're going to work on, whether that's through grant funding, whether that's through passing a bond. That's going to be up to you guys, and that's going to be my job as sheriff to communicate that and figure out what's the best situation. The federal inmate aspect of it, that's been discussed as far as offsetting some costs. The federal government will pay the sheriff's office a certain amount of money to basically hold some beds available. That's just an option that's been discussed, and we'll have to look at it similar to the grants. Like, what standards do you have, and what exactly do we require from us? And if it's something that works with what we've got going on, then we'll do it. And if not, obviously we'll have to find something else.
John?
So the 2 options that Sheriff Kramer and the staff have worked diligently on with the commissioners and the architecture firm are a remodel of the current facility downtown, which would cost $9.4 million. There are a few things in Idaho code that the sheriff is required to do. One of them is house inmates. So we cannot not house inmates. It's a statutory responsibility. So that's $9.4 million, that option. Or build a brand new facility to create better efficiencies, safety, and room for expansion 30, 40 years from now. 10.9 million. So about $1.5 million difference on property that the county already owns. There's several ways that this can be approached, but one of the biggest ways is trying to get a long-term low-interest loan, which that can be offset by either a sales tax, which I'm not in favor of, or a offset of revenue being created by housing federal prisoners, of which our facility isn't currently able to house federal prisoners. They pay a rate for using our facility. They aren't released in our community. We're used as a stopping point. This and Idaho Department of Corrections contracts could generate over $500,000 in outside money that the taxpayers will not be responsible for in Boundary County. That's whether we remodel the jail or build a new one. The choice is ultimately yours, and it's my requirement, it's my responsibility to make sure that you are as educated as possible to make that decision for the safety of our community.
As I noted earlier, when I started here, I started working in the jail. The jail was built, the current jail was built somewhere in the 80s, I believe. So I got here in 99, it was already having issues. I've been here 20 plus years. Obviously, it still has issues. I'm sure Sheriff Kramer, after a week of being retired, will be able to actually have a good night's sleep, not worrying about the jail. There is no great example or great way that we're going to be able to fix this other than being due diligent. With the technology that we have, we'll be able to put out the information that this is what we're looking at. Gather information from outside. It does not have to be that, oh my gosh, the guy from the sheriff's office figured out how to fix this. No, it's going to be something that's going to cost a lot of money. How are we going to defray that? How are we going to go away from the money? Planning on obtaining money from the federal government because housing federal inmates or the state is okay, but at the same note, I believe Monmouth County had some problems when they planned out that way. But it's there, the possibility is there, so of course we have to look at it. All those different options, all those different things that we end up getting are facts. And we throw it out to the people. So when somebody sees it and goes, man, doesn't make sense, we should be able to respond to that. Thank you.
Okay, John, I'll start with you. If a bus load of illegal aliens shows up in Boundary County, what are you going to do about it?
Rent buses, but first, working with the prosecutor to make sure we are doing everything to protect our own liability and move them out of Boundary County. Yeah! You have the rest of the time for the other things.
Dave.
We're talking about immigration, correct?
No.
We have,
Yes, we'll call it that.
we have an agency in this community that works with that. We get a bus load of illegal aliens, guess where we're going to be routed to?
Canada.
Canada.
Just kidding.
Wherever. It's up to Border Patrol to take care of them. It's also up to Border Patrol if they start letting them out the front door. You know, where are you putting these people? You giving me a homeless populace now? No, we're not going to do that. So if it comes down to having to rent buses or what have you, fine, we'll do that, but we'll make sure that we're doing it legally.
I've actually not come across a whole busload, but a car full of people that were illegally in this country. And our Border Patrol partners work really, really hard to do their jobs. And it's just an unfortunate state of the world that I can speak for them, I guess, that they're super frustrated with the immigration problems that we've got going on. And so this is, to me, not just a Boundary County issue, it's a state of the world issue, a state of the United States issue, where we need as people to kind of wake up and hold our government accountable. Like, this cannot be allowed to happen. And when we come across these situations, I can, you know, the one I'm specifically referencing, there was a really bad guy involved. And, you know, they thought for sure he was going to be able to be held and detained and shipped out, and it didn't work out that way. And there's nothing more frustrating than doing your job, doing everything that you're supposed to do, and then it just let back out. It's just super frustrating. So that's just, you know, something we got to work with our legislatures and, you know, put pressure on our federal government and make sure that kind of thing, you know, just can't happen.
Okay, so we have 2 to 3 more general questions for all 3 of you, and then we have 2 targeted questions specific to each candidate. So I just wanted to give the audience a little of a appraisal of where we're at. Okay, and if we got out of order, gentlemen, forgive me, I had to improvise. Okay, Dave, how can the Sheriff's Department be improved upon to handle the mental health issues in Boundary County?
Mental health illness throughout the nation is almost epidemic level. The only way that I see with the limited resources we have is get people trained, be a team of 2 or 3. Have those people understand that they're going to be on call this week, this person's on call the next week. We have to look at these situations and be able to handle them with an expert individual. All our individuals need to be trained. You need to have specific people that are going to be in charge of that. I'm not advocating that we're going to recreate a wheel or anything of that nature. We're going to take this on forces, get some specialized teams, if you would, and pursue it with that approach. I did that when I was working as domestic violence intervention training. I started that and worked as a team in San Antonio, Texas, and it worked out fantastic in that area. That's all.
Can you ask that one back?
Yes. How can the Sheriff's Department be improved upon to handle the mental health issues in Boundary County?
Yeah, so specifically, you know, the Sheriff's Office has a process to take a mental hold. And, you know, right now we rely a lot on reserves as someone who can help us out with that. But also, we need to, again, network and be involved with our community partners. This issue isn't isolated to Boundary County. You know, Bonner and Kootenai County all have the same issues. And I don't know if you guys are all aware, like, so for example, if we come across someone who's in a mental health crisis, we'll show up, you know, see that they're a danger to themselves or the public, and make a decision to basically take them into custody. But then there are responsibility at that point. And the responsibility is a huge one. I mean, you're taking someone's constitutional rights away from them, right? And we want to make sure that they're safe. So our options here, we contact our Boundary Community Hospital, who's very similar to everyone else in Boundary County. We have limited resources. You know, their ER department is going to triage, and we're going to try to figure out what we can do in that situation. But long-term care is really what we need to figure out. Because we've got beds that are full all the time. We'll have someone that needs a bed, like needs a bed. It's not wants a bed, needs a bed. And it'll be a week. We have to sit on them in the hospital and watch them. And the amazing drain on resources, not only in the medical side, but also the sheriff's office, it is just tremendous. And so that's just something we need to really buckle down on. And it's going to take, you know, hard conversations, whether it's with the medical field, health and welfare, and morally on the state level of just really trying to address this issue, because it's not going away.
John.
So the sheriff's responsibility is involving people or handling people that have committed law violations, as well as if they're a risk to themselves or others. But quite often, we have a criminal in the jail that's suffering a mental health crisis that we have to deal with. The biggest thing is networking the resources, having a plan. Law enforcement is used as the Band-Aid for all these issues. And this is not a Boundary County issue, this is a nationwide issue. There are not enough services and there are people that refuse to go through treatment, take their prescriptions, follow their therapy, and then end up in our jails committing law violations. It's my responsibility to work with the prosecutor's office if we have a low-level offender that's nonviolent in nature, and their mental health is deteriorating because we're holding them in their jail and we can't provide resources. I think it's more important, and I think if it's your brother and sister, it's more important we connect them to resources than have them continue to deteriorate. The other thing that I've been active in is Boundary County and Bonner County are now getting a therapeutic mental health home in Sandpoint to support our residents. It will open in July. That's a resource for our residents. I've asked to be be an advisor on the board for law enforcement for that transitional home. Also, as sheriff, it's my responsibility to make sure that the inmates have the medical support they need and the therapeutic support they need so that we don't get that crisis situation that often comes when they're incarcerated.
Travis, we'll start with you on this one. You may be familiar with the Baby Cyrus case in southern Idaho. Are there any circumstances where you would allow a child to be removed from the parents based solely on a CPS order?
Yeah, so that, obviously at this point, I think is something that is not going to be allowed to happen anymore. As John alluded to earlier, you know, we're basically need a judge sign off to remove a child from the home. You know, it's never an easy situation when we get, you know, law enforcement has to respond to a call and make the decision. You know, we just talked about the mental health side, but also to make the decision to remove a child from their home. You know, my grandma, she's in the audience here somewhere, was a foster care parent for my entire life. And I can't tell you the number of kids that came through there, and some of them are in prison right now, and some of them aren't doing well. And so, you know, and they each have their own individual trauma. Each situation is unique to them. And so, you know, it just really takes, again, communicating with the Department of Health and Welfare, communicating with the prosecutor, communicating with our courts, communicating with our deputies, what the expectation is, and making sure that, one, if we have to do that, it's the right thing to do. And then two, you know, the follow-up here, where are they going? You know, I know foster parent, the availability of foster parents in our county is limited. So if that's something you guys are thinking about, that there's absolutely a need for that. But, so just to kind of get back to the question of would I let CPS do that? You know, if it was a lawful order signed by a judge, yes. But if it's CPS saying this, then law enforcement's job is to go in there and investigate it and get that signature from the courts to make sure that we're doing it lawfully.
So I'm not specifically aware of the Baby Cyrus case, but I understand the facts that you described. And it sounds to me like it was an administrative order from the Department of Health and Welfare that they removed a child under and not a court order. First off, there's two circumstances that we can remove a child under: that immediate threat to themselves by other people, and also by court order. The other thing is, it's really important as a leader of the agency to communicate these changes, whether they be in case law, or whether they be a legal opinion from a prosecutor's office or the State Prosecutors Association, that this is how they're advising law enforcement to handle these situations. I've met with people in this room this is very near and dear to their heart. They deal with it every day in the school setting, the social work setting. We all see the same challenges, but ultimately it comes down to what do we have to do to protect the children, because we don't want to put them back in danger. And we need to be doing it right so we don't create a worse situation.
The mistakes made by others is what we learn from. That was a mistake. We learn from it. Again, my motivating factor, every day, 4-year-old comes up and I get to see that beautiful little girl. If somebody is going to come into my house and take her away, they better have some real good facts. You know? Networking is a big word out there for people, okay? It's just really simple. We're blessed with a prosecutor that make a phone call and she's on it, you know? When you contact somebody and say, hey, I need help, this is what I've got, be able to get all the information and throw it out there. If we're given an order, a written order from a judge, and we dispute it, our first stop is obviously with our prosecutor. So again, we learn from others' mistakes. Thank you.
Okay. I have one more question. I'm going to go ahead and ask it. I'm going to challenge you to keep your response really brief. If we have another national emergency, such as a pandemic, what shutdown orders or forced medical procedures would you enforce or allow to be enforced? And John, we'll start with you.
None. I reserve my time.
Real simple, none.
I thought that would be easy one for you guys. Okay, so that concludes the general questions. We're now going to ask each candidate 2 targeted questions, and going in alphabetical order. Dave, we'll start with you. You are still a corporal after 25 years and 3 different sheriffs. Why have you not been promoted?
If you look at the structure of the Panhandle County Sheriff's Office, above corporal, you got a sergeant, you got the undersheriff, you got the sheriff. This is what I'm working on.
Okay, question 2. You have stated plans to form a citizen academy. How do you intend to utilize citizens in your role as sheriff?
How do I say that again?
How do you intend to utilize citizens in your role as sheriff?
It depends on their capacity. What are they able to do physically? What are they able to do, mentally? What is it that their abilities give them? Okay, so if you have an individual, of course you do background checks. Of course you're going to vet them. You're going to find out what is the best avenue to utilize this person is. It could be as simple as the only thing that this person's good for is a door greeter when they're coming into the sheriff's office. That's fine. I doubt if that's going to be the case. But the bottom line is for us in law enforcement, especially, mind you, I started in '79. And it was basically here's a stick, put it on your side. Here's a gun. You went through the academy, military police, and boom, you're thrown out. I was blessed with having supervisors that knew the importance of the Constitution, and they would not allow me to even get near people until I understood. And we had classes, and we had debates, and we had all kinds of discussions. So they were filling the role of where are we in the day. Okay, that's exactly what I'm going to be doing with civilians. We're going to have a Citizens Academy that's going to be a minimum of 2 weeks long. It's going to be annually. The second year, we'll also have another academy, which will be the senior academy, or phase 2 of you. That is not our reserves, all separate animal. So you may see a constant state of training. When we train, we learn what our people are good for and where we can put them. So it all goes through the process.
Why did you leave law enforcement, and how can you be an effective sheriff with only 8 years of law enforcement experience?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So, at the time, I made a decision for my family. I thought that my wife and I were kind of getting into some home building business, and my attention needed to be where I thought was best for the family. But the second I stepped away, it's a calling. You talk to any of these guys up here, anyone that's ever served, It's a calling. And, you know, I care about what happens to our community. I want to be involved in the solution of, you know, the future of our growth. And how do we do that? By being involved. And so, you know, I had a lot of really good conversations with a lot of friends, and we prayed about it, and really just felt called that I should be here tonight. What was the second part of that question? Sorry, I put you on the spot there. Oh, how do I be effectively here with only 8 years of law enforcement?
Yes.
I've also got a lifetime of experience in the Marine Corps and 8 years in law enforcement. And, you know, we're all some of our experiences. And, you know, being deployed overseas, managing, you know, anywhere 30 to 60 Marines, managing a flight schedule, professional careers, safety programs. I mean, from day one in the Marine Corps, you're taught, one, how to take direction. You know, if you're wrong, you better be able to admit it. Two, learn the job of the guy in front of you and teach the guy behind you. And I really truly believe that. And I know that kind of leadership will transfer to the sheriff's office, and I'm looking forward to that opportunity.
One more question for you, Travis. You said you were born and raised here. How does that make you a better sheriff?
Yeah, I don't know that it's in and of itself makes anybody a better person or sheriff, but I do know the values that I was raised with. And I do know the community that I came from. I'm a product of this community. You know, I've got a lifetime of service, whether it was the Marine Corps or as in law enforcement. You know, I had, my dad was in the Navy, my grandpa was in the Navy. You look across our community, and that's doesn't, you don't have to be just in the military to serve. You look across our entire community, and there's so many people that are willing to help out. I mean, I'm coached high school wrestling right now, and you know I've been involved in little kid wrestling. I've taught hunter safety, and I'm not unique. I mean, there's so many other people out there that do the same thing, and so it really it's just who we are, and I'm proud of that.
Okay, John. Most of your career has been in larger metropolitan areas. If you become sheriff, will you be bringing big city policies to Boundary County?
So the person that asked the question didn't understand the population of Port Orchard is 15,000 people. Yeah, no, sorry. But the big thing is that, like the example that I gave earlier, if you have an emergency room doctor that's worked in Salt Lake and he comes up to the Boundary County Community Hospital and does his service in the emergency department there, do you think it's going to be a better emergency department because of the skills and experiences that he brings? And he is part of our community. The other thing is I have learned to work with many agencies in the state of Idaho and the state of Washington and be successful with those relationships. The biggest challenge here is building trust with the community. I built trust with the community in every community I've served. For 10 years, I ran a foster kids camp with my wife, who was the coordinator, reunited siblings who were separated from foster care. We did that for 10 years, reunited 1,000 kids, brought law enforcement in to interact with them. I'm invested in the community, I'm invested in our community. Travis, you can add them in here if I mention your name, you can. I've also coached youth sports for over 20 years. And I currently coach girls from Bonners Ferry all the way down to Hayden in the only premier soccer program in North Idaho besides Coeur d'Alene in Sandpoint. I think it's important that we provide that opportunity to our kids. We're part of this community. My family's here, my grandkids are here, my in-laws are here, my children are here. And I want to use my experience to make the sheriff's office better.
Okay, John, final question. Please elaborate on the lawsuit that was settled out of court which alleged that you racially profiled a man in Kitsap County.
Yeah, so this is a case from 2015 when I was a patrol sergeant and made a traffic stop on a car. So for 2 years, 11 months, and 2 weeks, there were no complaints. The man was arrested for obstructing and cited for various traffic violations. Like I said, 2 years, 11 months, and 2 weeks, no complaints, no claims, nothing. And as you know, the Puget Sound region went berserk with Black Lives Matter, Antifa, and defund the police. Thus, a federal lawsuit was filed. The gentleman, the driver that I arrested, was a black man. The prosecutor's office made the determination right off the bat between the sheriff's office and the prosecutor's office that, number one, to represent me as an employee, they have to prove that I violated no policy or no laws to defend me and pay me damages. They agreed to do that and defended it fervently until it was settled in 2021 after I retired from the sheriff's office, and the insurance company, the insurance pool for the state of Washington, the Democratic Board of Commissioners, and the Democratic elected prosecutor said it was a business decision to settle it with the subject.
Thank you.
I still have time. So, as sheriff, how that ties in here is I will back our employees 110% if they didn't violate law and didn't violate policy. And I expect the prosecutor's office and our community to stand behind them as well.
That concludes the questions, and I want to thank you all for your decorum. That was awesome. And closing remarks will now start, and we will go in alphabetical order again. So we'll start with Dave. Your closing remarks. You each have 3 minutes.
You've heard a lot of stuff from all of us. Bottom line is all 3 of us have passion in the show. Bottom line is real simple. I don't waste my time blowing smoke. You'll either know that I agree with you or disagree with you. I don't work the room. You ask me a question, I'm going to tell you the answer. You may not get the answer you want all the time, but I want you to be able to be assured that when you walk away, you at least got the truth. I have proudly served this county since August of '99. This is where I will be staying. This is where I am forever. I would really appreciate your support, your vote of confidence come May 21st. Thank you.
First off, I just want to say thank you guys all for coming out. Like, this is amazing. I wouldn't be lying if I didn't say I was surprised that there was this many of you. So, totally not in my comfort zone to get up here and talk to everybody like this, but, you know, it just warms my heart to see a community that cares, that wants to be involved, and they're going to make a decision. And, you know, on May 21st, when you make a decision to who you want to be your next sheriff, you know, I hope that it's me. You know, I do have the leadership ability, and I do have the want to and the desire to serve you guys. And I will stand up and make the right decisions. And if I make a mistake, I'll own the mistake and we'll move on. You know, we'll have a sheriff's office, like I said, twice or 3 times already tonight, that's accountable to the people. I'll hold those in my charge accountable. We'll be transparent. We'll set things like body camera policies. That's important to me. To be able to allow you guys to have trust in us is really what it's all about. And I look forward again to the opportunity, and thank you for coming out tonight.
Well, Boundary County is my home, and it's home to 4 generations of my family. The office of sheriff carries a tremendous amount of responsibility. The things that I plan to do when elected sheriff is, number 1, focus on drug enforcement. A lot of our crimes are related in some way to drug addiction, drug use, drug trafficking. That'll be my primary focus in law enforcement. The second part is advocating for the employees. The best people, when they feel valued, they will far outreach your expectations. We want to make Boundary County a destination place for law enforcement, not a place where we train them for a year or 2 or 3 and they go to another agency. We want them to be in this profession for a career, providing that public service to you. I will be focusing on the new jail because I don't want to leave it for the next sheriff. Secondly, I'm going to expand volunteer opportunities. This room is full of capable people and willing people that want to help public safety in Boundary County. And I want to utilize that resources right here in this room. Sheriff Kramer and I both got introduced to our law enforcement careers through the Explorer program. I will bring back the youth law enforcement program for Explorers to Boundary County. We have a lot of kids that show interest in that program. And whether they become law enforcement like Travis, Dave, or I, that doesn't matter. What we're developing is good people that may work for the fire service, may work in county government, may work in foreign countries as missionaries, but they started right here in Boundary County with our Explorer program. The things that I bring to the office, number one, I bring the experience. You don't have to train a sheriff for 4 years to figure out how they're going to perform on year 4. I'm ready to do it on day 1 after I'm elected. I bring that experience. I bring integrity through my accountability to my employees. Number one, it isn't always about correction. Sometimes it's about training them. Our community expects us to be the trusted law enforcement agency, the trusted sheriff's office. And the sheriff's office can't be trusted if there's questions about our employees. And I would like to echo the other gentlemen's thank you for being here tonight. This shows that you have a true investment and you know how important this decision is. So not only you, but your neighbors and friends get out May 21st and vote. Thank you.
I just wanted to say that the candidates are going to be here after this, so if there was questions that you had that we didn't address, you're welcome to go visit their booth, and we'll be hanging out here for a while while they clean up and everything. Also, we wouldn't be able to do this event if we didn't have sponsors, and I would like to thank our platinum sponsors. Realty Plus Inc., Linda Fioravanti Realty,